Okay, so we've got 30 minutes today, and I know that there's two of you, and I read a little bit, Amy, before I hopped on that you are looking to get some help with your curriculum, working with Somos.
Yeah.
Cool.
So background is just that. So Chris and I are both relatively new to this independent school that we work at
Mhm.
in New York City in Brooklyn. And I'm also um, new to classroom teaching in the United States. And so it's been like when I learned about comprehensible input and when I learned about what like Martina Vex was doing, and I was like, okay, sign me up. I'm
Yeah.
really interested, and I've been kind of implementing pieces here and there at least last year, and then I just went kind of to I attempted to like full on do Somos this year, and it's not been working.
Mm.
So I can like share a little bit about why that's not really been working, but a lot of it is around like classroom management. So I think the kind of sticking point for me is like implementing comprehensible input based um, classroom and lessons with like a lot of challenges around kind of classroom management with groups, and one of the other major things being like differentiation for a group that has a lot of heritage speakers. So
Gotcha.
but Chris, I don't know if you have something that you like, anything in particular that you are interested in like talking about or
Well, yeah, I'm coming from similar to, I don't know how many years you taught abroad, but for me,
yeah.
I did a year in France, and that was the only time that I had taught this age group, the middle schoolers. And then since then, my experience with foreign language education has been at the university level.
Hmm.
And so now I'm coming back to an American middle school and having similar struggles, like getting things covered in the way that I did them in university, and just adapting to the fact that, well, pacing is not an issue, but more just accomplishing what I think should be doable in the classroom due to mostly getting them to stay focused for more than 5 seconds at a time. So that's been, I guess, yeah,
I
I'm
got you.
looking for any opportunity to improve
Yeah.
engagement in class.
Okay. Okay. So first, Amy, this is wild happenstance. I don't really think that it's even a coincidence, but so I've been doing a couple of Q&As, and the person who was on Q&A right before you at 11 o'clock asked the exact same question as you. She's working with the Somos curriculum, a different situation, but she's working with the Somos curriculum, and she had a lot of success with it for a few weeks because like Martina's amazing. But then as she got into a few weeks with her sixth through eighth graders, she found that she had to adapt most of it because she couldn't keep up with what the lessons were expecting her students to do. So she's finding that she has to do a lot of it herself. And she was asking for help with how do I get middle schoolers on board with the very high expectations within these lesson plans. And it's wild that you're asking me the same question. And so you're not alone in that respect of trying to figure out like how do I implement the I mean it's a very well fleshed out curriculum. It's awesome, but it especially for middle school I've heard from other people that it does go pretty fast. And so if there's any kind of sticking point, like whatever it might be, like for her, the material was very high level. For you, you can't move forward at any kind of pace without a good classroom management, right? And for what you are working with, Chris, both of you are kind of coming from a very different experience of teaching. Like teaching in an American middle school is like nothing else on earth. It's very different. Okay, so for both of y'all, my first suggestion would be, what does it look like building relationships with your students? Because the thing with middle schoolers is that for them, School is their entire life. And eighth graders like to pretend that it's not, but their entire world still is. And everything that they do and everything that they say about class and the way that they act in class is a complete reflection of how they feel in your classroom. So it doesn't have to be all business all the time, because even in a real work environment, like you're really only working 90% of the time. So with school, especially with middle schoolers, the focus has to be on making sure that you know everything about what those students' favorite things are. And it's got to be stuff like details, like what do they do after school instead of their homework? What are the things that they're into? What video games are they playing? Like they need to know. And it's not about that you're a liked teacher. It's quite the opposite. They need to know that you like them, that you're obsessed with them. And university students are the complete opposite, right? Like they're content driven. They want to know that they're getting the deliverable at the end of the day. But university students, I know when I was in university, I can't speak to university teaching, but when I was in university, it was very much as long as you're having a good classroom experience and getting the material that you need, like check, it's all set. Like you don't really have to do it. Well, you do have to do management, but it's a very different style of management, right? But for middle schoolers, the management is actually all in the relationship. Like everything about knowing your students really well is the key to everything that will happen in your classroom. So there will be no progress with any content unless you have really, really good relationships with middle schoolers. So how does the relationship feel in both of your classrooms right now?
Do you want to
Sure.
start?
It depends on the class.
Yeah.
I think that it's maybe it maybe sways the way of they're having too much fun too much of the time. It's like I want it to be a really fun experience for them, but then I think it's to the extent that it sometimes comes at the expense of respect in the classroom. And so I think that language learning should be an enjoyable experience, or else you're not doing it right. But then when it's time to act, I mean, you still have to learn some grammar and you still have to go through some lessons. It's not just all conversation all the time. It's not all fun all the time, as we said. But I think I tend to lead it in a way that when it is time to get serious, they're not really inclined to do that. So yeah.
I think some similar things for me in terms of like, yeah, the fun is like explosive,
Right.
and it's like it's great. And it was like, we just had our family teacher conferences, and it was like a lot of positive things and like students really enjoying like language learning, but like, but wait, I need to tell the parent like that their kid is like totally out of control, right? And then it's like, okay, well, a lot of that's on me, and kind of how am I managing and creating that space. But I would say one maybe challenge, it's a cool thing for students and for us that we have fifth graders who rotate, and we only have them for a quarter of the year. So it's fun to like have a chance to teach an entire grade, and then you like see them go through middle school, and you might have them later on. But you have to do that kind of work of getting to know students over and over throughout the year. So with them, it's just a little bit trickier. I find that like over the course of the year last year, it just actually felt more draining than like some of my other grades because of that. But yeah, my sixth graders, I think I definitely, I had some of them for fifth grade, so I actually feel like I do know them pretty well. But I mean, we can always like know the students better. So maybe I need to just like do more of that during like break times and when they're coming in and out of the room and whatnot. But
Gotcha.
Walk
me through what your classroom looked like yesterday. Like, what did you do yesterday? And give me like a bullet point.
I had
Like, pick a period and tell me what it looked like yesterday.
Do you want to start?
Sure. We started off with a vocabulary lesson. So it was sort of word image association for the first part. Well, actually, there was a do now that came before that, which had to do with family member vocabulary and building their own family trees. But then there was vocabulary added onto it to use adjectives to talk about members of your family or of an imagined family or a celebrity family, whatever they were comfortable with. But before moving on to that, sort of scaffolding it from the basic family tree to like more colorful description of people in your family, there was like a vocabulary lesson. So chances to see how adjectives might look in a context before they would supplement their family trees with additional physical or personality descriptors. And then it's not as far back as I remember, but I know that we did something. We watched a video as like a cultural comparison about a celebrity family tree from Congo. So they were to build a family tree based on a video. So it's kind of all related, just different media to cover the same topic.
It sounds like a flawless lesson. Like you got everything covered in terms of, lots of different types of media. They're working with all different types of modes too. Were there any moments that came up that you were like,
The thing is, they react to literally every single image, and so
videos, anything with like movie talk.
And I think that's totally normal, but sometimes it detracts so far from what is going on that those side tangential conversations or commentaries that arise between slides. Imagine I have like a 30 slide show on vocabulary
and 18 reactions to every single image.
It's like, should I be adjusting how much I really want to get done today? Because this is happening a lot.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Total derailment. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Total derailment. Yeah. It is a bonus to have an exuberant class, but it is not easy to rein in. Like I've had the opposite where they give you crickets and it's horrifying. So you're in a good spot, but oh man, that's hard. That's really hard when they're giving you every 5 seconds they're chirping. That's hard. Tell me, what does your when do they get a chance to really interact with each other? And how can we differentiate that from time where it's like, there's no chirping during this section, and this is the time when you guys get to talk as much as you want to each other because they want to?
Yeah, good question. And that might be part of the problem, is that it's not consistently at the same part of every lesson every time.
And it certainly doesn't have to be, but I find that sometimes with classes that do a lot of that, and like that's pretty common with like 7th and 8th graders, right? Especially if they know each other really well. Like in middle school, they've probably been in classes a lot together for a long time, so the familiarity level is high, I would imagine.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I do the 2 principal exercises that I do for break out into conversation is a trouver quelqu'un. So like they circulate throughout the room and ask questions to find people that correspond to certain sets of information. And then for the example of the family tree activity, that's something we didn't get to quite yet, but the conversation portion of that would have been or will be exchanging information about each other's family, asking questions, like sort of interviewing each other. And sometimes I ask them to take notes so that they're not just asking and not listening to the person they're talking to. Mm-hmm. But more so, I prefer for it to be an entirely conversational activity for them to actually practice speaking the language. But yeah, that's supposed to happen every class. And sometimes because of how much time I spend on things I had planned, it doesn't happen. So yeah.
Because the vocab you're planning to take 10 minutes ends up taking 30. And then you run out of time for the conversation piece that they want so bad. You can tell them that. Say that, listen, this is Having things lined out on the board is really helpful, especially when you have something really juicy that they want at the end of class, like a game or like this. What are the things? This is going to be rhetorical because I know you already know what they are. Chris, what are the things that they love to do? Like their favorite activities, the things where they really get to hang out with each other. Put those in your head and think, I'm going to I'm going to backload those and put them at the end of class and write them on the board like as your object. I mean, maybe you already do this, but if you don't, put it at the end of class and emphasize it and go over it in the morning and say, or the afternoon, like whenever your class period is, and say, this is what we've got on the docket for today. This presentation, where, I mean, you're going to have to do this, where I'm the only one talking, needs to take 10 minutes and I'm putting a timer on. And if it takes more than 10 minutes, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. And I'll replace it with something where, and you can, insert quote unquote boring thing here. But the reward system is going to work really well for you because you don't want to punish kids for being exuberant and wanting to talk to each other. It's just that it's at the wrong time. Like you love them for who, and you can express this too in a little bit of a like, okay, meet the teacher pause moment that I love you guys for who you are and how much you love to talk to each other, but we're not getting through what we need to get through. And then we're missing out on fun activities. So here's how things are going to work now. When it's my turn to present information, I need all eyes on me, and then I will give you specific responses. You can further control this by making it French only moments. And this is where a lot of that comprehensible input, well, I wouldn't even say that, but like target language based classroom management stuff comes in that honestly I had trouble with in the high school because they weren't into it, but your middle schoolers would do really well with this. When I student taught middle school, they loved this stuff where you would give them points for only speaking in French. And it can be little things like like all kinds of rejoinders. So they're only allowed to react to things that you put up in pictures in French. Like they're only allowed to react with cool things like that. Or like for Spanish, like, ooh, no me digas, like things like that. They're only allowed to react with rejoinders. And anytime that they don't, you remove something or take something away. It can be points. My friend Sherry from World Language Cafe, what she does is she writes a really long word on the board and she erases letters as you hear people speaking in English. And you do this, you're going to do it for like a 10-minute block when it's your time to present information, when it's vocab time, what those specific moments are. And then see how that goes. But I feel like a really structured moment of presentation where you ask them to really tighten up on how much they respond back to you, reward them for responding back to you in appropriate ways, and either ignore or take away rewards, not punish, but like take away rewards and cool stuff for people who are exuberantly taking away time from class by, adding on helpful things in English. They'll get the message pretty quickly that like we need to tighten things up. And that adds a lot of structure and it helps to add with even more target language use in your classroom too. And with middle schoolers, it does help to build that rigor expectation as well of we're going to use more target language and we're going to use it in the right way. And then I would say too, maybe just put it in those moments when when it's a very teacher-centered activity of presenting language, presenting information, and let them do their merry thing because they don't have any issues interacting with each other when it's partner activities. Or I don't know, Amy, is it different in your classroom when it comes to that time? I know you said you had some out of control moments, but that's what I would try first. What do y'all think about that? Would that work? Is that helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely could, we could use a reset on them using target language, and structure has been a thing that's been really challenging for me with this year. And it's just like, I feel like it's just like 180 degrees from my sixth graders last year. Like for whatever reason, we were able to establish, and it can just be like personalities, we were able to establish that kind of respect and that kind of yeah, I just felt like I had less of the hurdles of like classroom management. We also had very unique like setups in terms of we were here but teaching them semi-virtual. They were sitting outside the building and like all kinds of things. But they like I was able to do a lot more starting the second half of the year. I just felt like it just like they like bloomed as language learners, and they were able to do so much by the end of the year, and I just felt like super proud of them. And this year it's just this like constant stop start. And so I think that I need to just choose something that I'm doing and like be confident about it and implement it in a structured way that it's that I haven't been able to do yet, because I think I've been having all these hurdles with like differentiation. In particular, I have 3 students who are heritage speakers. One of them uses the imperfect subjunctive in writing.
Yeah.
And he's in my class, and like we tried everything to get him out. And he also is hyperactive, and he's a big sweetie, but like he is just all over the place. I've given him like my high schoolers assignments and things, and you just never know how he's going to react, if he's going to be like excited about it, or he'll get like frustrated really quickly. And then the other 2 are in totally different like places in their language learning journey, but I kind of grouped them together. I created this sort of like audio and breakout section in that back corner of the room so that they can do it without being too distracting to others. But then it's like being able to manage this kind of almost like separate classroom. And then if they do come back now to rejoin the group, and if it's like, there are things that I'm like, I know that they can contribute, but sometimes like I'll get eye rolling if they have to do like the group activity, which is just a lot easier for them. And I've tried all kinds of like them leading the lesson. One of them is more enthusiastic about helping others than the other 2. But it just feels like with that group, I'm constantly trying something and then like throwing it out, trying this other thing. And I haven't figured out like what sticks, and like how do I structure my kind of class because of that.
Yeah.
And so I think because Somos has been particularly, it doesn't feel like a good fit on the differentiation piece. Like I just feel like I have to have something totally separate for the others. When I use that curriculum, then it makes it, I think it's just, yeah, it's been tricky. It hasn't been a good fit, I think, for like a couple of reasons. And so I'm like, do I just kind of ditch it at this point and go back to some of what I was doing last year? But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, heritage speakers are definitely one of those things that the entire country has failed to address when it comes to Spanish classes. And some schools are doing a good job of creating heritage class programs. But when you have 3 in a class, that's a huge challenge. I experienced this in my Spanish 1 and 2 classes with that same thing of like, they need to, and like we had 3, 4, and 5, like Spanish 3, 4, and 5. And for some reason, guidance would still always send them to 1 and 2. Finally, one day I asked them, like, why are you in Spanish 1? And it turns out that a lot of them chose to be there because they thought it would be an easy class. So this might be different for you, but I'm just wondering, when you talk to your heritage learners, what do they want to do in class? Like, what do they like doing and what feels good to them? I mean, you might not get productive answers, but what do they usually say?
One of them has the like productive anything is just not, but this is him. I also have him in homeroom, and I had him last year, and he's just like all over the place.
Yeah.
And he also is like borderline doesn't need to be in that group, but he's so proud of his heritage that I'm like trying to also kind of honor that and make that space for him. And it's tricky. So then the other 2, they're so hungry for Spanish learning, like they're really into it. And so I'm like, that's awesome. And that's why I feel like I'm throwing everything at them. And so they any amount of like a Duolingo or it's not going to be. I did garbanzo with them for a little bit, and they like graduated garbanzo in like 2 weeks. And so so I I have them like write stories, and then like read each other the stories. They'll occasionally read the story to the class, but like I think that kind of maturity around that role is like not there yet.
Yeah,
And
because what age group was it again?
10 to 12-year-olds, I have fifth and
Yeah.
sixth, and then I also teach high school, and it's just like such a different thing. And I've
Yeah.
felt like a breeze this year compared to my fifth and sixth graders. But yeah, so I think like I feel like I ask them all the time, like, is this working? And you get like any number of not helpful answers a lot of the
Yeah,
time.
from 10-year-olds about what they want in class. Yeah.
But yeah, and I don't know. It's like, do I just keep checking in with them every week and say
I
like,
mean, you already know, like you already asked them, you already talked to them, and it sounds like you got a great handle on exactly what they want. You've got one learner who is not really getting anything from the language content of class, but tell me if I'm wrong, but wants to represent hardcore the heritage side. And I mean, I'm sure that you've done this, but you can do all kinds of things with that and amplify that, where he creates most of the content and allow him to shine for being the expert that he is in his own culture and sharing things with people in about himself and his family life and his culture. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, big presentations to the group all the time. He can just be sharing with you. Like he could just be making materials for you all the time. For your other two learners who are really hungry for Spanish content, what I used to do, it's like, let me know if this is helpful, but what I used to do is I used to just give my Spanish heritage learners who were hungry for content too all the time, all kinds of authentic content like Spanish magazines to go through and write things about and to react to, and circle things that they wanted to know more about, and to research things on their own using like a bank of 10 websites that they could interact with, that were things like news publications and songs and stuff like that. But that gets hard with the 10 to 11-year-old age group. So I would see if you can reach out to your guidance department and say that you need, and maybe you've already done this too, but this would be my immediate next step if you're in this. Have you talked to your guidance department about getting more support with this? Because they need specified support with they're not getting what they need out of a regular level class like you've got.
Yeah, it's
and that shouldn't all be on you.
Yeah, it's on our the head of the department, that stuff. And it's honestly been like, it's been tricky. It's been something I've been talking to our head of the department about since last year, because this came up last year. It just wasn't as challenging. And these are three people who I'd also said shouldn't be in sixth grade Spanish. They are in sixth grade Spanish, and it's like, and it's just tricky because that's like a separate thing. But
it's really hard.
But
I'm sending you a name of a colleague of mine. She is a resource creator I know she's on Teachers Pay Teachers, and I think that she has other stuff too, but and courses and things like that. But she is brilliant, and she specializes in heritage learners. I think she's in the high school realm, but I feel like you would be able to get so much insight from her because she specializes in heritage speakers, heritage learners, and heritage learners at all different levels and what they need at different levels. Check her stuff out. She's amazing, and she would probably be able to give you a lot more insight than you. I think that you're doing the right things, and that now you need to take it to another level of I need more support with this, because especially if you've already got a lot to handle in your class already, like this is something that might need to be like as you're already doing, you've already done it. Like you're coming to me with a question where you've done steps 1 through 75. Like there's only so much that you can do as one person with another class to take care of. Like you're already doing a lot for them. And I gave you a couple things that you could maybe try, but honestly, you're doing a lot for them, and you're giving them the best that you can with what you got. That's hard.
Yeah. No.
And heritage speakers are awesome. It's a shame that they get put in that situation a lot with Spanish classes.
Yeah, I know. There's like so much space for them it's like it's something that it's like a sticking point for me, because we have an affinity space for Latina and Latinx students, but we just started it for middle school this year, and I think it's like they've got a really good thing going for high school. But
tell me more about this. This sounds cool. What is it?
It's an affinity space. We have affinity groups at the school where students will kind of select their affinity spaces that they participate in based on their identities, or if they'd like to kind of be an ally of someone who identifies as such. And so we have, I mean, like over 15 in the high school, and then it's new for the middle school this year, but they meet once every 7-day cycle. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's been, it's going. I think like the high school ones are just more established, they're more student run, and so they just look a little bit different from the middle school one still. But
what would it look like to reach out to is there a teacher ambassador for these affinity groups, or like a student leader for these affinity groups? What would it look like to connect your students with that affinity group at the higher age group level, and have them connect and maybe do more stuff with them in your Spanish class instead of the content?
Yeah, I did last year to connect them to the upper school one. It's just like a really
like you've already done all the steps. You've done everything you can.
No, yeah, I think there is more that we can do with like middle school, especially because I always worry about like the 5th and 6th grade. They have all this, the exuberance and the like excitement and that spark is there, and I just don't ever want that to like be lost because like didn't get to give them the like tools that they need to like make it happen. So
well, I think what you should take from this is that you're coming to me with ideas for what you should do, but what you should recognize is that all of the good ideas are coming from you. Like you're a fountain of great ideas, and so you should trust your gut with when you're thinking and worrying about what should I do next. You are coming from a little bit of a space of, I don't have a lot of experience in this US space. Like this whole area is new to me. You have a ton of great ideas. Like you've already gone through the gambit of the full, like, You're doing more with your heritage speakers than most people do. Like the majority of Spanish teachers do with their heritage speakers. That's incredible. So you should trust that the ideas that you have and the place that you're coming from is wildly above and beyond, which should be the very bare minimum for our Latinx students, right? But you're doing an incredible job with what you've got and the resources that you got. So you should be really proud of that.
That's very nice. Thank you. I don't know, Chris, do you have like any other specific things that you wanted to?
No, I have had similar ideas for, takeaways for me were the point system rewards and different, not to call them punishments, but different consequences for certain patterns of behavior in class. In the past, there are teachers that do a point system at Poly, and I don't want to sound lazy by saying this, but sometimes like having a daily point system for multiple students is like a lot.
I would agree. I would absolutely agree with that. I don't think it's a lazy point of view. I think it's a tracking point of view. Like there's a lot of room for error. It adds a lot to your daily workload when you're already doing so much. It works really well on a class level, and middle school, and like you'll know better than I will. But the one middle school class that I taught, did very well with a classroom based system. In my experience, like high schoolers, I don't know what you think about this, Amy, but I find that high schoolers don't do well with a class based system because they're also individual at that point already. That and they're not as attached to a class dynamic, but middle schoolers are pretty attached to a class dynamic. So do a class wide point system or a letter system. Like some people even do things like it can be as simple as putting marbles in a jar and then an empty marble jar, and you move marbles from one side to the other. As like you get 5 marbles when you have a full letter still on the board at the end of the day. And once you hit 30 marbles, you get an awesome class reward. And maybe even the students get to decide what their class reward is. It could be as simple as having their phones out for 10 minutes without you bugging them. Like kids love that stuff. It could be really simple. It doesn't have to like, do not get into the trap of thinking that you have to buy a lot of stuff for classroom rewards or plan a huge thing for classroom rewards. They can be very simple, very, very simple things.
It could even be letting them watch the video they keep asking me to watch in class.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I was just about to say that like middle schoolers love YouTube videos and they love making their teachers uncomfortable. They probably already have like a cringeworthy video on deck ready for you.
Oh, it's ready. It gets mentioned pretty much every class at this point. Yeah.
Dangle that carrot. Dangle that carrot. I love it. I love it.
And yeah, that's a good thought. I started to get stressed out about thinking of managing it on an individual basis, but you're totally right in that it's a collective experience and they definitely react to things that are on a class level as a group more so than any other level that I've experienced. So yeah.
You know what it is too, is that you can take advantage of where I have a post for you for I'll send it to you for the way that their heads are at for middle school specific world language learners is that in the development stage that they're in, you already know because you experience it every day, but the peer pressure factor is what creates that collective idea. They have this thing called the invisible audience. The 13 to 14-year-olds feel constantly, I mean, you probably remember feeling like this when you were 13 to 14. You feel like everybody's watching you all the time. So you react to everything like everybody's watching you all the time. And you feel like you're part of this invisible community thread. Like it's part of your brain learning how to be an adult is learning how to be stitched in part of a community. And you can absolutely use that to your advantage. Whereas, once you hit like 15, 16, depends on the person, but you start to break out into that like rugged individualism. So like before they hit that point, you can definitely take advantage of the collective giant brain that they've got going on right now in how they experience your classroom. And what they'll do with that is they'll start to help create boundaries for each other. Be like, whoa, like, Monsieur told us not to do that. Like, don't talk out of turn. I want my 10 minutes of phone time. I want to watch the video. Like they'll help you out. So you can get them in on the experience too. That's why I like doing the class-based ones.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna check out this differentiation and heritage speaker person definitely. And I also I want to spend some time like really doing structure more, even when there's lots of different things that I'm trying. I just like want to figure out how to provide more structure.
Dude, structure's everything. Structure's everything in middle and high school. It's everything.
Yeah,
it is. And like within structure, it allows you to be creative. It does. Yeah. It allows you that freedom to be creative and to experience that success that you miss from your last class. Like your kids are just as successful this year. They're not showing it to you in their language right now because you're right. They're being held back by a lot of other distractions.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that this was helpful for you. It was so fun to get to talk to y'all.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. And I have I've just opened links to a couple of things that I also just want to check out on your blog that I think will be really helpful that I haven't had a chance to read yet. But
good.
Yeah, and the daily planner stuff I also really appreciate. That was good too. I'll share that with you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good. Awesome. All right. I have one question for y'all before we leave because I'm creating a new program for world language teachers. And I want to make sure that it is built by world language teachers and like what you need and what you look for. So it's going to be based on like a monthly membership so that you have access to the content that you need on a monthly basis. And when you ask your admin for it, and not yourselves, not out of your own pocket, but when you ask your admin for it, when you're looking for PD stuff, when you're looking for things to help you, what's the stuff that you're looking for right now? Like, what would you want to be in there for you to be like, yes, I need that?
Yeah, for me, I think the thing that's like in terms of the curriculum pieces that I get bogged down by, I guess what I is hard for me is like looking at a lot of text when it's like here, I'm bad at following directions. So this is like, I talk with my homeroom about this all the time. Like directions are hard for me. I have to like be told them in different ways, just like many of my students. And so and some of that is like comes from also this like I just want to do it my own way, and so that is like I'm really aware of in myself and my students. But so when it comes to the curriculum kind of pieces, when there's like 3 pages of directions that come with something, I like shut down and I just get like kind of confused, and I'm just like I can't do this. I need to find something that's like more streamlined, simpler.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big piece for me when I like when I'm like in that kind of okay, I have this much time, I have to get this planned. Like if I'm gonna get something off of teachers pay teachers, whatever, I'm like looking for something that's like simple and makes sense to me to not have to, and like potentially has that space for creativity as well. Like I can kind of do, I can adapt this somehow.
That's infinitely helpful to me. So what I'm thinking of doing is that part of it would have resources attached to it, but people would be able to request what resources they want. What I want to do with it is do video demos with each resource that's provided to be like, here's 3 different ways that you could use this, depending on what age group you've got and what your prep schedule looks like. So so if you're sitting there watching the videos, like what kind of things would you want to see? Because you're like me, you want like different options for like, how can I make this my own?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, actually watching them like happen with human students is helpful for me to see. And then yeah, and then just making it again, I think it's always that like timing thing, so that things are kind of like short and sweet enough that it just like gets right into it, and you have a sense for like this is how this could work for me and this is how it might not. But yeah, I don't know if that's helpful.
It is. Yeah. So short videos, especially like with other humans using it. Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah.
I would honestly support that as well. Just the more I can see of how something works in practice, just I don't know. It's good to have like a visual example of how something's working. But also like I don't know. I'm always looking for a reliable source of starters for, if that makes sense, like starters for ideas of themes I want to cover in class. Whether it's like a fully scaffolded lesson or just like an activity worksheet, I generally don't just like go onto a resource and use that directly. I usually just think like, oh, that's cool. I'm going to make that what I want it to be now. But like it's nice to have like sparks of ideas. So just the amount of time that I spend on Google looking for reliable sources of for lesson ideas is ridiculous. So like just having like a couple of pages I can bookmark as like, oh, I can go here all the time for like starters for my own lessons, my own curriculum ideas. So yeah.
All right. So that's perfect. Chris, you're like the other type of teacher that a lot of people tell me that they are, where they like to see how people create things and how they create lessons to be like, oh, cool. Like I want to make that myself. Can you show me how you made that so that I can make it too and do it, in my own in my own little way. That's really cool. So I wouldn't have thought to put that in there because that's really easy for me to do. Like I did that in a blog post recently and people loved it. They're like, thanks for showing me how you put this together. Now I can do this myself. Sweet. All right. I'm going to do more of that then. Cool. Thank you for that. All right. Well, thanks guys. That was really helpful.
Thank you, Devin. Have a good rest of your day and
thanks, y'all.
Happy holidays and restful holidays.
You too. Enjoy your breaks. You deserve it. And know that it's such a fresh start too when you come back with your kids. So there's a lot of opportunities to try new routines as well.
Awesome.
Here's hoping.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. All right.
Thank you.